There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Hi and welcome to the Triple F for another episode of the Triple F Show. Matt and I recorded a show last night covering this week's Champions League games, the Klassiker, Inter Milan's alarming situation with their Chinese ownership, and a little update on how 4 former Ajax superstars are getting on. Hope you guys enjoy and thanks again for listening to the Triple F. The Champions League games. I suppose there's no better place to start than the Juve-Porto game, because I'm sure you're in agreement on this, but it's pretty much the most thrilling. There were a couple of thrilling Champions League games, but that Juve-Porto one, a 4-4 Porto win on away goals. What a absolute banger that was.
Absolutely. I mean, you're saying that was more thrilling than the 6-7 minute wait for VAR for Dortmund just after the second half. I mean, hell, we'll get onto that.
We will.
Juventus Porto there. What a game. That was just incredible. That second half and beyond into extra time. Absolutely loved it. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. It was proper end-to-end stuff, and turn up for the Bucks. I wasn't expecting it, but to an extent, Juventus had it coming. The way they laid their store out, it was almost inevitable. As soon as that game plan sort of started to take shape a little bit from Juve. So I was impressed with Porto's performance.
Yeah, because I think with that sending off for Porto and those goals from Chiesa, Juve must have thought they had it in the bag, and then Porto's heads were expected by everybody to drop, but they didn't. And then Juve sort of most likely got complacent after that, and I think that's where Porto really capitalised on it. And I touched on it on Twitter, and I'm not sure if you saw my reply to your tweet, but having a human draft excluder in a wall, it looks ridiculous, but it is effective. And I think Juve paid the price of not having a human draft excluder in their wall.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that, though, with that wall set up and the communication. Everything with that was just all wrong.
Yeah.
I think that does point to a larger issue with Juventus in that they are too over-reliant on Ronaldo for that. So there was a huge gaping gap. Even you could fit another man in that wall, let alone the jump that Ronaldo had there. It was just a poor setup, a poor defensive formation there. Szczesny should have done more to organise that, really. But then how do you then instruct Ronaldo on what to do? Can you ever tell him what to do? Maybe that's part of the problem, that you can't. He's too big a player to instruct. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, yes, like I said, that not having that player laying down on the ground is essentially an issue. But the bigger issues lie in the fact that, yes, Ronaldo turning his back on the shot, awful. The other defenders in the wall jumping and just sort of not doing enough. The fact that, like you said, not enough defenders in that wall to begin with. And then Szczesny sort of getting a salad hand on the ball. The thing is with Szczesny, he should have anticipated that the ball was going to go into that area, and he obviously didn't. And it was just an absolute shit show defensively. It was shocking.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. And I can't understand that performance really from Juve. It was disjointed a little bit. I think communication was lacking. There was one point I remember with Weston McKennie. He was literally had the entire sort of final third of space to run into. They just passed it sideways to Juventus. They didn't see the opportunity there, so they didn't have the vision in order to execute that attack, and he would have been clean through. He's absolutely rapid. He would have been one-on-one if the ball had been played, and it wasn't. It wasn't seen, and his exasperation, throwing his hands up in the air. I don't think it was particularly caught on the commentary or anything, but you could see it in the top of the pitch that he really, really was frustrated, and maybe that does point to a larger issue, like I was saying, with that wall, with that communication. It's it's too disjointed to really form an effective team.
Do you think it sort of highlights the deficiencies in Pirlo's management, essentially?
Um,
In the way that, defensively, obviously Allegri, you would not have seen anything like that. I don't think you would have seen anything like that in an Allegri setup to a Juve team.
no, I don't think so. Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Pirlo's he is inexperienced.
Mm,
He was only a manager of a youth team for about a week or something, so that was pretty inexperienced beyond the occasional social media post and photo shoot. So what did he really bring to the table in terms of management compared to Allegri? I doubt there was really much. Um, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that Juventus have now fallen back and sort of retrenched and had no progress whatsoever in the last few years. And so why um, the owner thought that they could have any kind of success with Pirlo above Allegri just baffles me. It was a really strange decision for me.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an odd appointment, but that's essentially the decision that Juve have made now, and it doesn't look as if they've got any other options in place if they were to sort of cut loose with Pirlo. So it looks like they're just going to have to stick with that decision for now, unless things go horribly wrong, because they're still sort of in and thereabouts with sort of proceedings in Serie A, but I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this exit in the Champions League. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, to sort of contradict myself. Maybe this is too much damage, and possibly the powers that be at Juve are thinking of a new appointment.
I think they always are. I think there's always going to be an eye for a new appointment with Juventus. It's that kind of
Mm.
managerial merry-go-round that there always seems to be.
It's almost what
Um,
we talked about with Chelsea last week, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, to a degree, and I think Allegri was given that dreaded vote of confidence after their Champions League exit last season.
Mm.
Look what happened. It's
Yeah.
it's going to be the same again. I think with Pirlo, whether or not he has a little bit more. I don't know, a bit more of an
Credit in
investment
the
in the club.
bank.
Yeah, credit in the bank. That's a good way of putting it. I think maybe. Um, so we'll see. We'll see.
Mm. Right, we touched on it earlier, the Dortmund-Sevilla game. Yeah, a game slightly overshadowed by terrible officiating, shall we say.
Mm, that was it. It wasn't necessarily terrible officiating in that the decisions were probably reasonable.
Mm,
It's just the time it took. It was over
yeah,
6 minutes. I timed it, and it between each goal going in. It was about 6 minutes and 15 seconds or something stupid. So it's mad. So Haaland scored initially.
mm,
That was ruled out for a foul. Then VAR brought it back for that penalty, which in fairness was a penalty, but then the penalty was taken. Keeper was off his line, which was completely ridiculous. He could have
mm,
saved it if he'd have stayed on his line. And then it was taken again,
mm,
having already Sevilla had an attack in the meantime.
yeah,
It was just maddening, really. I mean, if the technology's there, it needs to be a lot quicker than that. It was far too slow.
yeah,
Um, it should have really been a lot more efficient than what it was. But it was
mm,
entertaining to watch. I mean, I wouldn't have liked to have been there in the ground, but
mm.
certainly watching it on telly was funny. Watching with the commentary as well. But yeah, a mad game really.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked to have been a Sevilla fan. And Robert, my heart goes out to you, because
Oh,
that must have been must have been horrible to
mm,
endure. But it's also almost annoying that Haaland's first goal. I know, would it have been the second goal? I don't know. Anyway, that goal that was cancelled out before he had to take the penalty. That goal was incredible. The one where he was it was almost like he was right on the edge of the 6 yard box, about to go out, but he I don't know, he sort of flung a foot out at it and spun at the same time, and the ball just sort of went into the top corner beyond Bono. It was quite incredible. And then it was absolutely disappointing that it was all sort of ruled out. Then he had to take a penalty for it.
Yeah, it was. It was. I think if he was a smaller player, it might not have been ruled out because Haaland looked so massive against that defender. It sort of looks as if he's been wrestled to the ground. So it was unfortunate. But yeah, the stab at the ball that went through the smallest of gaps really was quite. It's a mark of the man. Again, what is it now? Is it 14 goals in? No, 20 goals in 14 games, rather. So the quickest to 20 goals in the Champions League. That's some record.
Yeah,
really is.
The guy's inhuman. He really is. Messi's rocket of a goal. I mean, we don't usually see that type of goal from Messi. So that was quite impressive.
It really was, wasn't it? Something like 30 odd yards, just an absolute rocket of a shot. It was just an incredible goal. So I'd definitely urge you to go and check that out if you've not watched it yet. So it was the sort of dying embers of a bit of a dynasty there. But it was nice to see. He's still got it. So he's having a good season on the goals front, isn't he? So nice to see.
Was that Messi possibly sort of advertising his abilities for his potential suitor?
I don't think he needs to advertise anything.
No,
I think people are well aware.
Advertising it firsthand, shall we say?
Well, advertising the fact that he's still got it, maybe, I don't know, that he's still got something to offer. He's got another good few years in him at the top level. Whether or not that stays at Barcelona is up for debate with their leadership struggle that they seem to be having at the moment. And we'll see what happens with that one. So that'll come out in the wash, I would imagine. Certainly one of them, I can't remember which one it is for the presidency, is campaigning on a platform of keeping Messi within the club. So, it could be that he finishes his career there. So we'll see. Yeah,
as far as I'm aware, I think Juan Laporta has actually won the presidential race. So he is.
Oh, is it already? Yeah, I've not been keeping track of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he is actually the president. So I think he was the president at the time of the sort of Pep Guardiola reign. So whether we'll see any sort of return to those days is, it's unlikely, but we never know.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see on that one. Something needs to change with Barcelona, certainly in the finances and stability of the club. So hopefully, it works out a little bit better than it has done in recent months.
Yeah, but I would say, I think a couple of months ago with Barca, it did look as if things were just absolutely terrible and abysmal. But now, the last sort of run of games, barring the last night's Champions League match, they're sort of running La Liga. It's been pretty promising, and there's a few sort of glimmering hopes, shall we say. You've got the likes of De Jong, who's a phenomenal footballer, Pedri, this young incredible talent that's coming through, and then you've got your likes of Ansu Fati. I know he's been injured, but what a promising talent he is, and likes of Araujo and stuff. So they've definitely got a great future ahead of him. And I think with Koeman as well, if they stick with him, I think he's the right manager to take them through to a new regime, shall we say?
Yeah, potentially. It does go a lot deeper, though. I mean, on the pitch, you can't argue with the fact that Barcelona are a quality side, and they've got some good young talent. So they are building for the next generation, for Messi to hand over the mantle. But underneath all that, there is hundreds of millions of euros of debt, which is really going to have an impact on any recruitment they're going to have to make eventually. And the stability of a club is really going to struggle on that front. So something needs to change. The ship does need righting behind the scenes.
Yeah. Liverpool, do you think they'll get a boost from the Champions League win?
I think inevitably. I think it worked really well for them yesterday. So it was a real shock for everybody. I think everybody concerned that they lost against Fulham at the weekend, and they've had a horrendous run of form. We talked about it last. It was 6 games in a row they've lost at home,
Yeah.
which was arrested by that 2-0 win against Leipzig. So it was promising. They rested the players that they needed to against Fulham. So that was, I think, a sign that they potentially have just sort of given up the ghost on the league potentially. So Leipzig, they put in a decent performance. Let's say Fabinho dropped back. It was more of a case of experience over young heads really for that move with Fabinho in the back four. So it worked really well for them, and attacking they proved quite useful again. So yeah, if they can replicate that moving forward, then the Champions League could be a potential option for them. But they've just lacking that strength and depth, which worries me a little bit for that front.
I put a tweet out yesterday saying how European giants will always remain European giants, even though Liverpool are having this absolute dreadful run of things in the Premier League. It's possible they could win the Champions League. I know it might be a bit far-fetched to say, given the sort of injury problems and all the other problems they've got off the field. You can't write them off.
I don't think you can. It's unlikely, though. I think they do need a lot more strength in terms of, obviously, defence. We've spoken about that before. They don't have that top-class, world-class quality that they do need to be able to make a decent run at the Champions League. Unlike, say, Man City, who have really shown that their defence is proving almost unbeatable. So it's going to be a big surprise for me if Liverpool do go beyond the next round. I would have thought it'll be a real shock for me. I don't think they've really got it in them, but it's the competition that they're going to really push for this season now. So at least they're going to make an effort, I would have thought.
It's cup football, Matt. Come on, anything can happen. You know it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I know that all too well as a United fan. In the Champions League, so it could happen. It could happen. Yeah. Klopp knows the competition inside and out. He knows what's needed. So if he can get a tune out of this team, then potentially
they could be the first team to win the Champions League and get relegated. It would obviously, I say, tongue firmly in cheek. If you're interested in coming on the show for an Under the Floodlights special to talk about your favourite player or manager, please email the FFF2021@gmail.com or DM the FFF84 on Twitter. All contact details will be in the episode description. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the FFF. The Klassiker, Matt, we obviously wanted to talk about that during the last podcast, but didn't have time. Or just sort of passed our minds. But what a match that was.
It was crazy, wasn't it? 4-2 in the end, and it was a sort of clash of the titans with Lewandowski and Haaland there. So defensively for both sides, I would say, I think it's fair to say it was a real poor performance. Nobody's getting in team of the season with that performance.
No.
4-2, it was just end to end. You have a shot, I have a shot, and it was bizarre, really, for a top class couple of teams. You'd imagine defensively they would have set their stall out a little bit firmer against top world class strikers in Haaland and Lewandowski, but it was all about them. They stole the show, wasn't it? They stole the headlines, and it was remarkable to sort of see such amazing players on show, really.
Yeah,
it really was.
It was surprising to see Haaland feature against Sevilla, because that mark, or whatever it was, slash in the side of his ankle, I don't know if you saw that. There was a big close-up of Haaland when he came off. I think, did he come off at half-time, or he came off maybe at the start of the second half? But he had this major gash on his ankle, and I thought that's going to rule you out for the Champions League game. But it just goes to show, like I said, the guy is inhuman. And he ended up playing it because it was only 3 days after as well, the Sevilla game. So it's just mental to think how just inhuman. I hate to keep sort of repeating myself, but the guy is.
He is. It's like, he's Terminator. He's just going to heal. He's sort of made out of that metal, that liquid metal that just heals straight away potentially. But he's too good a player, I think, to skip the opportunity to play in the Champions League, and I don't think he'd pass up the opportunity to do so, especially when he's on such a rich vein of form when it comes to the Champions League. In terms of that Klassiker, it was pretty much to form, wasn't it? I think, and it was interesting to see Terzic with such an amount of nervous energy. It was almost Bielsa-like pacing the touchline there. But whereas Bielsa has an element of control, I think Terzic was a little bit nervous, a little bit too. I don't know. His emotions were showing a little bit there. So,
do you know what Terzic needs?
He
needs a big bucket like Bielsa. That might calm him
he does,
down.
doesn't he? Yeah, sit yourself down, son. Yeah, sit yourself down and just chill out a little bit. But yeah, he doesn't quite look the part, does he, with his snapback cap, and he looks a bit trendy for a top flight manager. But
yeah. No, but we'll see. Maybe he can turn things around and prove himself to be a better manager than he kind of is at the moment.
He's freed of the expectations, isn't he? Now he knows he's not going to last the season, obviously, because there's a new guy coming in, and maybe he just does have that freedom now that he can make a stab at the Champions League and show some strength in the league as well. So maybe the close season might be a bit of a boost for him.
Yeah. Are you aware of what he's going to do when Rosa comes in? Is he going to, step down and sort of go back to his original role, or what's happening with him there?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard, or at least I've not looked into it. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think he'll be short of a few offers. I think he's young enough, he's vibrant enough, he's motivated, he's got that enthusiasm, like I say. So I think any club will be a decent move for him, really, in that top flight. I don't think anybody's going to turn him down necessarily. But he does need to, drop down a level and then prove himself a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it is very much the sort of typical appointment of manager that you see in the Bundesliga. So maybe, like you say, any other club in the Bundesliga would be willing to give him an opportunity and give him a chance. I'd like to see it.
Yeah. He seems like a nice chap, He seems like he deserves another try. So, yeah, fingers crossed for the lad.
Mm-hmm. Right, Matt. So the Inter Milan Chinese ownership, I'd like you to sort of tell me about this as much as possible, because I've had a little read about this myself, but I feel absolutely none the wiser for doing so. Perhaps that has more to say about me than anything else, but if you could please sort of educate me as to what is happening at Inter Milan with their Chinese ownership.
Yeah, it's a bizarre one. We spoke about it at the end of the podcast, the record last time, and it's a bizarre one that really caught my eye, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that the owners of Inter Milan, who at least have a controlling stake in Inter Milan, owned a Chinese Super League club called Jiangsu FC. They were called Jiangsu Suning, but the Chinese government asked them to remove that name because they didn't want to. They wanted to appear a bit more professional, a bit more attractive as a football proposition. So they removed the corporate sponsorship in the name. So they were renamed Jiangsu. And so they were owned by Suning, who are a massive conglomerate. They own hundreds of millions of supermarkets and shops and various things, but they've also got their fingers in all manner of different pies, whether it's media, TV, anything like that, really, transport. So they're one of the biggest companies in China, but they've been really struggling of late. In the last 3 years, I think the share price has dropped massively. So they were really struggling to prop up a club that was draining a lot of money. So eventually they approached a Chinese entrepreneur, what's he called? Jack Ma, he's called. And I don't know if you really remember the news at the time, but he kind of disappeared from sight in China, from the public eye. He was quite a gregarious character. He was quite a character which I don't necessarily think worked well in partnership with the Chinese government. They're not historically the most I don't know, forgiving of government, shall we say? I don't know. I don't want to criticise them too much, given our government, but
yeah,
they really cracked down on this chap, this Jack Ma, he was called, and he disappeared from sight, literally disappeared. Nobody knew where he went. So he's since reappeared. He's certainly a little quieter, a little bit more reserved. So I don't know if he's been to some kind of re-education camp or something like that, shall we say. But yeah, they approached him for some money. It was going well, but they had a disagreement, a falling out, and ended up um, that deal fell through. So they struggled a little bit, and then they approached the Chinese government for state support, which was provided. But then China, as a government, decided that football and investing in football wasn't the way to go. So they've they won the league 3 months ago. They won the Chinese Super League. So they were one of the biggest clubs in China. But yeah, they decided that any kind of investment in football and all these clubs was a luxury that couldn't be afforded. So they decided to disband the entire club, which was incredible for a championship winning side to be completely disbanded
Yeah.
and the club erased from history. It's bizarre. So whilst that might be something that it's not uncommon in China. That's happened before. Some clubs have come and gone. It's not the first, and it probably won't be the last club in China to do that. But what it does, it has wider implications for, say, the European clubs as well. Obviously, for transfer market, that a lot of value's been taken out of the market recently, and this hasn't helped. So Sunning own Inter Milan in terms of a controlling stake, which is where it sort of affects us and us European football fans, and that's really going to have an impact in how Inter Milan are run. I mean, Atletico Madrid, for instance, they had a Chinese owner who pulled out. Again, the Chinese government said that any money spent in Europe on football should be pulled back. It shouldn't be spent abroad. Which has obviously implications for the ownership of Inter Milan. So it's going to be an interesting few months now, especially with COVID. Inter Milan are taking, forgive me for just looking at some notes there, but they earn 60 million euros a match at home, which is a huge amount of money. And obviously that's no longer there. That income stream is no longer there. So they're losing hundreds of millions this season on that. Sky Italia, who are responsible for broadcasting the games in Italy, have pulled back, and they've withholded. I can't remember the figure exactly, but they're withholding a lot of money for the payment of the broadcast of the games as well. So they're losing TV revenue, and so where that money comes from is going to be the next issue. I think they are looking for reinvestment and investment partners, as they sort of euphemistically term it.
Right.
Essentially, they're wanting rid of their controlling stake. So what's going to happen is they're going to be selling the club for, I would imagine what they want is somewhere north of 700 million euros. Whether or not that is an achievable figure in today's market is up for question. I would be surprised if anybody wants to pay that kind of money.
Yeah, me too.
Commercially as well, they've lost their shirt sponsorship. So that kind of shows that companies don't necessarily want to get into bed with that. They don't see the value in the club anymore. But then again, if COVID wasn't an issue and clubs could generate income, then potentially it could be a wise investment. Inter Milan are a big side.
Oh yeah.
They're a bit of sort of historically a bit of a basket case of a club. They were up and down. They were ownership issues and everything like that. Didn't really have any consistent level of stability. So if somebody can come in and pay that money, invest that money, then potentially they're onto a winner there. But it's whether or not finding somebody willing to stump up north of 700, 800 million euros, close to $1 billion. It's going to be the issue. So it's going to be a real interesting few months for Inter Milan, despite the fact that their domestic success is doing really well at the minute. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's a real interesting case to keep an eye on, which would have. It's just a shock, how it all kind of connects around this sort of global industry, which never used to be the case anyway, not in my day, but yeah.
Are we potentially seeing then, is this what we're witnessing? Are we witnessing the glass ceiling of football starting to break?
Um, yeah, yeah, I think so. I think the money's just not there now. If somebody wants to, um, invest that kind of money in a club that historically hasn't been the most stable, historically hasn't been, the easiest to get on with, then it'll be a real gamble for me to confidently say that somebody will come in for it. I can't imagine who would do.
No.
There have been investment firms that have looked, private equity firms that have looked at buying the club, but just haven't made the move. They just don't see the value in it. So, yeah, they really are gonna struggle in the next few years, and I don't think they're not going to have the investment from Sunning. That's going to dry up a little bit, I would have thought. I don't think if they're really struggling financially in China, are they going to really sanction another 350 million euro spend in the last 5 years? Are they going to replicate that? It's going to be doubtful. So yeah, it's they're either really going to struggle in the next few years, or somebody's going to come in and rescue them.
What kind of punishments would Inter Milan be looking at then if they're not able to sort of secure stable ownership?
I think for now, I think for the next couple of seasons they will be safe. I don't think they're going to pull out completely, but I just don't think they're necessarily going to continue the level of investment that they have done. So their punishment, as it were, is going to be in their league form. They're not going to be able to back up the squad. They're not going to be able to continue to pay the likes of Lukaku the kind of wages that they're expecting. Management wise, it's going to be difficult to justify that salary of 11 million euros for Conte. That's a huge amount of money for a manager in Italy. That's probably, I think it is the biggest salary going. Spalletti, he had a golden wave of about 26 million euros, so he was told to bugger off and given 26 million euros for the privilege. So it's not exactly the wisest spending of money at the moment, and they're not going to be able to continue that. They can't justify it, not when the company is really hemorrhaging losses domestically. So yeah, it'll definitely be cutbacks, and they'll be potentially not going to be able to challenge again, I don't think.
Do you think the sort of likelihood, because it does, I mean, are they 5 points ahead in the Serie A of AC Milan? Is there any chance that the sort of the likely winning of Serie A will sort of help in any way?
It'll be hard to argue otherwise. It's we talk about advertising your wares in the window, and that's going to be the biggest advertisement you can get. So they've got potential. The next step for Inter Milan naturally would be Europe. So if they can kick on a little bit in that, then yeah, it could be that they do enough to make themselves attractive to a proposition. So yeah, it would be, in ordinary circumstances, it would be a good investment to make, because they've got that growth potential. They're commercially, they haven't invested as much as they could do. So, there's potential for growth there off the field as well as on the field. So if things do start to get back to normal, then we might see a different story altogether. Potentially, I might be painting too drastic a picture, but it was something that really caught my eye, and I thought it's so unusual that it can't not have a knock-on effect on Inter Milan. So perhaps they might be shielded somewhat a little bit and protected from any great losses, but you can't sustain the level of losses that Sunning in China have without it having a knock-on effect on their investments, on their companies, because to them they are just another company, aren't they, realistically? So it could be that they're the ones to take the hit on the wider issues that they face. So yeah, it's got some quite big implications for football worldwide, I think.
If you're enjoying the FFF Show, then you might enjoy our other podcasts. The Magic Of is a show which profiles special clubs from all over the world to find out about their history, culture and fan base. Under the Floodlights invites fans to talk about their favourite players and managers. and the Triple F Cinema is where guests and I review weird and wacky football films. Ajax Superstars. I was going to call it the Ajax Wonder Kids, but considering Hakim Ziyech's about 27, a bit unfair to sort of call him a kid. I've got a name for the superstars, shall we say? So bear with me on this and tell me if you like it. But I've called them the four horsemen of the Ajaxolypse.
You might have to go back to the drawing board with that one for me, I'm afraid, Simon.
Well, I worked really hard on it. Mind you, Ajaxolypse does sound like something on a menu that you would definitely avoid if you were in a foreign country, shall we say.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a pun now. Cleaning up with Ajax, maybe. I don't know. Ajax is a cleaning product.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that's probably better than my one. But I thought I'd give it a go. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about those guys. Hakim Ziyech is now at Chelsea. Matthijs de Ligt at Juve. Frenkie de Jong at Barcelona, and Donny van de Beek at Man United. Obviously, they all made such a huge impression in the Champions League in 2019. Obviously, in those exhilarating upsets against Real Madrid and Juventus, and that classic against Spurs in the semis. Ajax essentially have always been a selling team, so it was a little shock to see them leave. But I just wanted to see how they were getting on and just sort of ask you, out of the four, who you think is getting on the best and who you think's potentially struggling the most.
Struggling the most, I think it's natural that I would be more aware, obviously, of Ziyech and Donny van de Beek. I think, obviously, as English, as playing for English clubs and imports into the Premier League, it must have been a real culture shock for them to come from where they came from. So, for instance, Ziyech, he's really struggled this season, really struggled. I expected big things from him. I thought, he was a pretty early selection for me, for instance, on the fantasy football. I thought he might do some business for me, but just hasn't done the business at all for Chelsea, and really struggled since Tuchel's come on as well. I don't think he's really done much there.
No.
If even been selected as well, so that's the issue for him. And what needs to be said about Donny van de Beek and his experience at United, it's been shocking. You spoke in the intro there of that performance against Tottenham, for instance. He scored the only goal there, absolutely dominated most, if not all, of that competition for Ajax. He had a better goal ratio than Fernandes, if you discount all the penalties that he takes. He was a real exciting proposition, I think, of those four. I think as a United fan, I was really excited to see him play regularly. It's just he hasn't had that opportunity to even put a string of games together. I don't know what's really happened there, but I mean, can you argue with the decision not to play him, given that United are playing to a reasonably high standard with a pretty good midfield and strike force there? So difficult to argue with Solskjaer, given that he's having such success.
But then it begs the question: what was the point of buying Donny van de Beek?
I mean, it does beg a belief, really. I mean, what is the point? But then at the time, I think the strength and depth was a real factor in that purchase. So I think Solskjaer really did envisage more rotation, a little bit more of a frequent gameplay there. So it's just bizarre. I mean, after that Madrid game, he just ran riot against Real Madrid, for God's sake. And you expected him to then to pitch up at United, pitch up at Old Trafford and do the same. It just hasn't happened for him. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Potentially there's an issue there, but we've all seen the scenes of him sat in the stands just looking absolutely miserable.
Yeah, you just want to give him a hug.
You do. But I mean, how miserable are you going to be, really, when you're earning $100,000 a week? It's
not too bad.
No.
We talked about sort of building projects before last week. I mean, is there a case for the fact that Man United are essentially expecting Pogba to leave, because Pogba, although the sort of transfer talk is sort of quietened down at the moment, there's always the possibility that Pogba will go. There's always, I think Pogba's come out and said it in numerous sort of public statements that he wants to go to a bigger club. So with that possibility of Pogba going, is there a potential sort of replacement for Donny van der Beek there? Could he be Pogba's stand-in, shall we say, if he were to leave?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the idea, at least, anyway, wasn't it? I think Pogba's never going to be that career footballer that you can really count on. I think it was obvious that he's been distracted. His attention's been moved elsewhere. So whether it's a return to Juve or back to France with PSG, I don't know. But he's not going to stay beyond the season, I wouldn't have thought. Not if his agent has anything to do with it. So yeah, potentially Van der Beek could step into that role. That, like I say, it was the intention, I think, looking at it, that similar styles of play, I guess. But whether or not Van der Beek has what it takes to do that, Pogba has, regardless of sporadic runs of form, he is a pretty big player for United. So can Van der Beek fill those shoes? I don't think it's been proven yet. I don't think he's had a chance to prove it, but it's certainly not been proven, which is going to be really important when making that decision.
Yeah. So where you mentioned Donny van der Beek kind of suffering because Man United have too many sort of players in that position, is Hakim Ziyech suffering from the same thing in the sense that Chelsea have too many similar players of his sort of, that winger sort of central attacking role, because you've got the likes of Kai Havertz and then Christian Pulisic. I don't think Christian Pulisic is favoured as much as Tuchel, but then you've got Mason Mount and sort of similar players that are always going to be favoured more than the likes of Hakim Ziyech or Pulisic. Is Ziyech sort of suffering from that, do you reckon, as well?
He's got to be, surely. I think that, like you say, I think there's a similar situation at Chelsea as there is with Van der Beek and United. There are a whole host of different players vying for a very similar position than that Ziyech occupies in that attacking mould. So it's got to have an impact, hasn't it? I think Pulisic has really grown recently in recent seasons. I think he's got to be pushing on the door really for a starting berth. But at the same time, it's not been a Chelsea team that has succeeded much this season, so it's not really a necessarily fair proving ground, shall we say. So potentially he may start to come into his own a little bit as the team do find a little bit more success. So maybe it's unfair, an unfair assumption that he's not really doing it. But yeah, I think the jury's still out on Ziyech. I think he's got a little bit more favour in the bank, shall we say. A little bit more patience from people may prove right, really.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So we've talked about the two four horsemen that are sort of struggling the most. Now let's look at the two that are the other two that are doing incredibly well. Let's start with Matthijs de Ligt. He's played 61 games, 4 goals and 1 assist, which is incredible for a centre-back. That's better than Ziyech and Van der Beek, who are essentially attacking midfielders. He's really obviously one for their future, and it was a great choice for him, in my opinion, to go to Juventus. A young potential world-class defender to sort of own his craft at Juve under the tutelage of Chiellini and co. Was essentially a no-brainer, and I just think Juve, they kind of see him as the future of their club defensively.
Yeah, that has to be the case. Juve have to be on a bit of a rebuilding project, certainly after this week and their recent exit from Europe. It has to be a rebuilding project based around the likes of de Ligt. I think he's one of the world's biggest prospects for that defensive position there. So they need to, as harsh as it may be, they need to get rid of Ronaldo, and they need to have more of a team ethic, because that is too top heavy. That team, that club are too reliant on one player, which doesn't work. It doesn't work at PSG for a large extent with Neymar. It's not working with Ronaldo. So yeah, De Ligt seems ideal as somebody to build the team around. You know, they've got a decent young team there. Chiesa, like you say, McKennie, I'm a big fan of, and De Ligt. It's a good spine they've got there. So yeah, I would expect big things from him.
Sort of similar to Barcelona in a sense. Obviously, they don't have the financial crisis that Barcelona have, but in terms of, you know, sort of rebuilding on a set of really promising young players, it's a similar scenario, really.
Yeah, it is. It is, and he's a really exciting player to watch, and that attacking mentality from when he was younger is really showing, even as a defender. That, like you say, that goal scoring record is remarkable. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the future brings for him.
Yeah. So the best of those four, you can argue, and I think he's the best of those four, and that's Frankie de Jong. 8 goals, 10 assists out of 80 games. Absolutely world class, in my opinion. I mean, Barca, where sort of Van der Beek, Ziyech, and De Ligt, their clubs have respectively sort of shown patience in them, and they could be sort of using them sparingly to build them for the future. But Frankie de Jong, he was pretty much just leaned upon and sort of thrown into the thick of things from the beginning. And you can do that with the likes of de Jong, because he's just world class, in my opinion. He's absolutely different gravy. And, you know, the guy is just showing his talents. And I think he's, you know, like I sort of mentioned with Barcelona, where it's similar to Juventus, they're sort of building on this crop of youth. Frankie de Jong is a big part of their youth for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of both Barcelona's and Holland's future, I would imagine. He's really got that. I hate the term DNA, but he's almost sort of bred for that Barcelona style of play. So once Messi does start to leave, you know, it's going to be the likes of De Jong who do step up to the mark. He's such an exciting player to watch. You know, he's got that control of his game, that sort of foresight to see all around him, that kind of Iniesta sort of mold almost, that works really well for Barcelona. So yeah, I would. He's, like you say, he's one of the best, and if not the best of those four. And yeah, I definitely expect big things for him. Yeah.
I hate to use the comparison, but considering they've played for more or less the same clubs, he does have something sort of Johan Cruyff about him. And, you know, it's scary to see where he sort of goes in the future. But yeah, under the likes of Koeman at Barcelona, and then with the likes of the sort of young talent that we've mentioned before in and around him, I think you can essentially build that team around de Jong. And I don't think you go too far wrong with that, really.
No, I'd agree, definitely. I think he's really living up to his transfer fee, 75 million, I think it was, and he's really proven his worth. I think a rare bright spot in a difficult season for Barcelona. So yeah, I've got high hopes for him, and for Holland as well, as you know, a wider national prospect. It's going to be an interesting few seasons for Holland and the national team, I would imagine.
Definitely. What interests me about the Netherlands is the fact that you've got so much talent in the sort of main areas, the areas that you could essentially call the spine. So if you've got Van Dijk, De Ligt, De Jong, but then it's strange. You're almost struggling to find an out-and-out striker. The only one that really comes to mind is the one that's doing extremely well at Wolfsburg, and we've talked about him before, and it's Wout Weghorst, and he's really the only one that, out of all the sort of Dutch strikers, that you can really say is deserving of that number 9 spot, shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, bring back Dennis Bergkamp. It would be. Yeah. It'll be an interesting, like I say, it'll be an interesting few seasons to see what they can do with that mix of those ingredients, really, to see if they can really turn it into something that'll they need to be competing to Holland. I think it's been far too long since they've been a real force of nature, really. So yeah, I'm excited. They always play in an exciting way. They always bring something to the game, and almost one of the first teams I always turn on. If they're playing, I'll watch a Holland game. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, the thing is with Weghorst, I think he can actually really flourish in that sort of role, being the only real recognised striker, and then you've got the likes of Depay and Bergwijn that can whip in some great crosses for Weghorst to sort of lap up. I can really see that being a good fit, and I can see them doing really well. Just hope we don't face them too much in the Euros or sort of going forward from here from an England perspective.
Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal, would it? But then, we spoke about Euro '96, and look how that turned out. So we'll look forward to playing them. We always seem to sort of up our game against the big sides, and Holland are a big side, so they need to be competing.
Yeah, we'll see. Right, Matt, I think that's everything for us. Thanks so much for coming on again, buddy, and I'll see you again very soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Simon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Triple F. If you could please drop a like on our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter, that would be massively appreciated. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the Triple F.